Cool. So I'm Chris Connaker, founder of ComputerAudiophile.com. It's a website focused on the merging of high-end audio and computer playback, music servers, and everything like that. So I can talk about stuff. I've seen you at every one of these. Good to see you again. So I can talk about stuff and bore everybody. My favorite part is to take questions, though. And whatever question you have, the next guy's probably thinking the same thing. So just ask it, and obviously there's no dumb questions. And I probably won't know the answer, so that's why I have my computer here to look it up. So I guess I'll start with a kind of a topic that a lot of people are talking about. And raise your hand, ask a question at any time. So DSD, that's kind of like the hot topic. And you know, where's it going? Do I need a DAC that plays DSD? And is it better than PCM? And all that kind of, anything you can think of, you know? So really, from my perspective, I kind of look at it from a consumer standpoint. Who cares? It doesn't matter. If you have music that's DSD and you want to play it, then that's what you want. So, you know, who cares what's better, what's worse from a technical perspective, and does it work good on this DAC chip or whatever? It's like I have two versions of John Hyatt's Bring the Family album. And one is ripped from a DVD audio, and the other is ripped from the SACD. And I like the DSD version better, so I want a DAC to be able to play that. End of story. I could care less if one is technically better or worse, or, you know, engineer X says DSD playback is the worst thing you could ever do. So from a consumer standpoint, who cares? It doesn't really matter. If you're making records and recording, then you may want to look into the technical aspects of it. But, you know, that's a conversation for AES, maybe not RMAF. But consumers, who cares? Listen to your music, and if that's the version you like, then, you know, demand a product that can do it, or purchase a product that can. If you like PCM only, cool, you know, then get a PCM only DAC. But it really doesn't matter. I know that's kind of not for the best conversation. You know, it might have been cooler if I could have said one's better than the other, and then we could have argued about it for a while, and, you know, that would have been funner, but really it doesn't matter. Yes?
What is DSD? My Google Foo failed me when I tried to figure it out, and is it like a form of DRM?
No. So the question is, what is DSD? I know there's going to be a panel tomorrow, probably, that's all about DSD. So it just stands for Direct Stream Digital, and it's really nothing. That's kind of the marketing term for it. It's just kind of another audio format. So DSD, you could say it as that's the format that goes on SACDs. That's kind of a don't ever answer a test that way answer, but from my understanding is that's the way I look at it. So then you get DSF format and DSIFF out of that, but DSD is kind of the general title. No DRM involved, really. Yes?
I had a question just about what's actually recorded DSD, you know, in the high resolution versus, versus what was not recorded in DSD and been upsampled or something. And how do we know where that cutoff was in time? You know, whether the 1970 recordings were done DSD or whether they were just done, you know, regular CD format kind of thing.
Yeah, so the question is, how do we know if this recording was really DSD or was it PCM upsampled and all that kind of in general, how the whole high-res thing works?
Yeah, because you go online and you want to buy something, and of course they have all these formats.
Yep.
And you look at some of them and you think, they can't possibly have had that technology in 1958, you know. So how do they have a 192 file or whatever?
Yeah, exactly. You could go by, you know, when the technology was invented and when the recording was made and say, okay, that's obviously not a digital recording to PCM 192, so let's kind of look at the provenance of this. And it was probably done to tape, and okay, where did it go from there? So you can do that for every recording, and there's certainly a lot of conversations online about, you know, this is just upsampled, or why is this at 192 if it came from tape? Somebody just transferred it to 192, and there's no information above 10 kilohertz. Why don't we just do it, you know, at much less? You can have that debate forever and worry about that a lot, or just get a version that sounds best to you. And I know that's not like the answer that everyone wants to hear, because you got to spend money, right? Do I get the 96K version? Do I get the 192 version or the DSD version? It's, in a way, it's going to be trial and error for a while, and every recording's different as well. So hopefully somebody that you know has tried it, or online, maybe there'll be some user on a forum that you kind of have the same likes or dislikes, and he says, you know, I tried the 192 of this, it's great, you should do it, you know, then try it. But everything's different. There's so many engineers working on all these different recordings, so there's really no like solid answer for that, and it is frustrating. But in a way, people are holding the internet retailers far more accountable than anyone else in the past, because when DVD audio discs came out, a lot of those were just upsampled Red Book. And I don't know anyone who went back to the local record store and said, I want my money back, I'm complaining, this is upsampled. Yet everyone's going to the online stores saying, you know, how could you sell this? This is crazy, you know? I get it that it's easier for them to check it, running it through a program and all that, but to put a little perspective on it, this has been going on forever. And it's just a little easier to look. If you run it through like Adobe Audition, you can see if there's a cutoff for this was definitely 44.1, or you know, if you look at some Steely Dan and you look at the stuff they used to record it, 44.1 was the maximum. So how do you get greater than that? Then there's always the issue of, okay, it was like my favorite band's Pearl Jam. They've recorded some stuff at 48K, and yet they have released it at 96K. So I asked a mastering engineer that I know, you know, why is this? This just seems like a ripoff. And he said, well, no, because what they're doing is taking the 48K digital, transferring that back to analog to mix it, and then they're going to release it at 96. And he gave me a very long explanation on why they prefer to do that. And I thought, okay, you know, you produce the music and that's what you want to do it, so be it. If I think it sounds good, awesome. If not, oh well. So it's just, you can get caught up in it and just drive yourself nuts forever about it. So, but I hear you. I wish it was easier. Yes?
Yeah, a practical question maybe. I have like a Betas media computer that I have outboard, you know, hard drives to store the media, music and Blu-ray movies. But you know, that's limited in terms of space. So I'm thinking the best solution is to go to a NAS system, network accessible storage. And the question is where I would want to place that NAS unit versus where my media computer is. Probably 75 to 100 feet, maybe. It's a pretty good long run.
Yeah.
Am I going to lose anything if I use Cat5 to make that run?
Okay, good question. So he's got a Betas media server, and he's running out of space for storing music, because especially if you go high res or Blu-ray, whatever, that takes up a lot of space. So you need to do something. You can attach as many external hard drives as you want, but those get noisy if it's anywhere near the listening environment. So he wants to go to network attached storage or a NAS drive. I use NAS drives for everything because, you know, say you have 18 terabytes in it now or 6 terabytes, whatever. They're so easy to upgrade now. You can just pop out the drives and put in bigger ones and expand the rate set. That's like awesome compared to back in the day. It was like an act of God to do that. So now it's cool. So you're not going to lose anything. You could put that, so one run of Cat5e can go 100 meters or so, and there will be zero loss. Put a switch in there, and you can go another 100 meters. So, you know, you can store it at your neighbor's house. It doesn't really matter. Mine is off next to my furnace in another room, so I never hear it. I don't care. You know, it just needs to store it and serve it up when I want it. So NAS is an awesome way to go.
Just make sure you use 5E, not 5. There's a big difference between them.
So there's all kinds of different wires, Cat5, Cat5e, Cat6, and all that. So get Cat5e, that's rated at a gigabit.
I got to use what's in there, so if it is...
So When was it put in there?
Probably 7 years ago.
It's probably Cat 5e. Yeah, even if it wasn't, it'll probably still work fine because you're not pushing the bandwidth at all. So you'll be fine. You could get someone out to come test it too if you wanted. That's no biggie. So, yes.
I'm sure a lot of us have collections of audio files that we've gathered from different places over time. Is there a program, like in the video world, there's a program called the G-Spot, which is used to analyze a video file and tell us exactly how it was made, how it was encoded, all the ins and outs of that particular file. Does such a similar tool exist in the audio world so that you can take a look at a file that you've gotten and you don't even remember where you got it and said, okay, how was this encoded, how was it created, and really tell you sort of how it was constructed?
Very good question. So let me, yeah, I'll repeat it just 1 second because this, I'll be able to show something up here, hopefully. Oh, gosh. So the question is, you know, over the years you collect files, music from all different sources, and you want to know more information about the file. Kind of, sometimes you can see how it was made, and like in the video side, he said, you know, you can see codecs used for it and all kinds of stuff. So kind of good timing. I just published an article. This is my site, Computer Audiophile, called My CA Software Toolbox. And in here, I have, I wrote about an app called Media Info. And that app tells you some stuff. So why don't I just pull that up. Let's see. So this is Toad the Wet Sprocket. And here's some info that it gives. It was made with Pro Tools. Here's when it was encoded. You know, overall bit rate, constant bit rate, audio stream, and stuff like that. So you are kind of limited to a file type or what was embedded in the metadata, but it's probably not as good as some tools made for video. But this is one. It's either free or 99 cents, so you can give it a shot if you're interested. Yeah?
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yeah.
Once you've looked at that and you know what you've got, are there programs out there that will take a lower quality audio file and reprocess it such that the resulting file is better?
So the question is, once you look at that and say you have an MP3, is there a program out there to take it and process it and make it so the resulting file is better? I will say sure, because you know better is subjective. You may like it better, so you can run it through any processing you want to make it better. You could turn it into a WAV file or run it through any audio program and do EQ, whatever you want on it. But personally, I would never do that, just because getting something from nothing, you can't do it. You can certainly change it, and maybe you'll like it better. But there's nothing wrong with that. You know, you may be better off just playing it back using a certain EQ or something. But you know, if you can think of it, you can do it. Whether you'd want to do it or not, who knows? Did that?
Yeah, I think back to the days of like Dolby noise reduction, where you would add Dolby B or Dolby C to improve the quality of an audio recording. God rest his soul now, Mr. Dolby.
Yeah.
But I just didn't know if there was anything that existed in today's world that is applied in that same way to an MP3 file.
Sure. You know, that's kind of interesting. I was talking to John Reesback from Amara. You familiar with the software? Okay. And you know, SoundBlade is one of their products, and they have this thing called No Noise. And he's working on an app now that'll take out a bunch of noise for like Spotify. And in a way, that's kind of similar to what you're talking about, is the original recording and then minus all of the scrap, and the resulting product is better. So in a way similar, in a way not. But yes?
Could you speak for a moment to the best practices of ripping a CD to an audio file on a Mac-based system that would allow one to experience what I've read in terms of the ripped file sounding better than the physical CD?
Certainly. So the question is about ripping and kind of, to paraphrase, what's the best way to do this on a Mac and you know, have it sound better than spinning the CD in a CD player. So on a Mac, there's a few different ways to do it. One of the somewhat newer ways is JRiver released a version for Mac. JRiver is a great program to do ripping and library management and playback and everything. You can rip into FLAC and playback FLAC, which is awesome now on Mac, because iTunes, you're just so limited. So that's if you kind of want the all-in-one. But kind of the diehard audiophiles, oh, this will be crazy when I get a text from my wife and it shows up here. Oh, my gosh, huh? Whew. So the program that a lot of people are using is XLD. And since I don't have a disk connected, it's really not going to show much. But I can at least show you what I do here when I rip, if I rip using a Mac. So I rip to the FLAC format. And here's like options and different compression levels. And I just set it to default at no compression. You can do whatever you want. It can depend on if you're using network playback, if you're streaming to a DLNA renderer. Some of them can only play back FLAC files that are compressed somewhere in the middle between like number 4 and number 6. Sometimes there's a value associated with the compression. So there's not like a best, here's the way you must do it in terms of compression. I just picked none, why not? And then other stuff, yeah, sure, it's not really critical.
You have to use FLAC file?
No. Certainly you can use whatever you want. You can do Apple lossless, WAV, AIFF, doesn't matter. What playback program do you like to use?
Well, right now I'm just doing Decibel.
Decibel, okay. Decibel can probably play FLAC, can it? Yeah, so you can do FLAC. Or if you ever wanted to, go back to iTunes or whatever, do AIFF, iTunes will play that just fine.
Has the JRiver's system got a little better? When they first released that, it had a lot of bugs.
It certainly did, yeah. They did what a lot of software companies don't, and they let people use the very, very early versions. But it certainly got a lot better. And I just installed version 19, so I haven't licensed it yet, which is why that pop-up came up. So that's a lot better. And it is easier if you can use the all-in-one solution to rip and store your library and play back. Or you could use XLD to rip right into your JRiver folder that it watches. So that's easy too. One thing that's kind of cool about XLD is after you rip a CD, it'll pop up with a little log of exactly what it did and go against like an accurate rip database and all that. To me, that's kind of helpful, because you can rip with iTunes and it'll gloss over some problems until you go back to listen to it in a year and go, oh God, I threw that CD, in the pile next to the furnace. I don't want to re-rip it. So, ripping hardware, to me, I've never found any difference. So, I think on the DB Poweramp website, they do list a bunch of drives and how many errors that they've seen with certain drives, but most of the drives out there are really, really old and you could never find them now. So, honestly, I have a couple USB Blu-ray drives that I'll connect here and rip and be done with it. Because I guess in my opinion, if I rip a file and the checksums come out to be the same as somebody with one of these supposedly better drives, if the checksum is the same, to me the file is identical. So I don't think there's a difference. Yes?
I'm looking at building my own box for playback. Does the motherboard have much, or first, what's your preferred way of getting the digital stream out to an outboard DAC?
Okay, what's my preferred way of getting the digital audio to an outboard DAC? It really, really depends. I guess 99% of the time I'll output via USB, and whether that goes directly to a DAC or to a USB to AES converter, that depends. But USB is so convenient. Every computer's got it. I have audio cards, like an AES card or a Micarinos card that'll output AES with a breakout cable and all that, but it's way less convenient. So asynchronous USB is kind of like the default standard that almost everyone's going to now.
Okay. I was actually looking at going optical. Is there any difference on the computer side? There is hardware for optical.
So is there any difference? He's looking at going optical out, and is there any difference on the computer side for optical? That's really not my specialty, but optical is really, really cool for isolation. So you can have the noisiest computer in the world in terms of, emitting EMI, RFI, whatever you want, and if you connect it optical, it's not going to get to your audio system. Brilliant that way. I believe the standard for optical stops at 2496. You can squeeze 192 over it. I just think it's out of spec. I could be wrong, but I believe that's what it is. The jitter numbers, I believe, with most optical are much higher than other interfaces. But, if you use it and you love it, awesome. Who cares, right? So it's great to get rid of the noise. Yes?
Can you drop down your output format list for us one more time and just talk briefly about each one of those and maybe pros and cons? What are we looking at on that list?
Okay, so what we're looking at here is if you're ripping CDs, what formats you can rip the files to. So WAV is kind of the old, been around forever seemingly, kind of default for a lot of things. The interesting here, you'll see it says write tags. So WAV files traditionally were just like file 1, 2, 3 and had no metadata tagged. So you would open it up in a program like iTunes and you would see file 1, 2, 3. And if you had a 5,000 CD catalog, you had a whole bunch of 1, 2, 3s, and it was really, really hard to find what you're looking for. Now, applications can embed the tags into WAV. It's always been there, but it's just nobody has really done it until now. The problem with doing that is not every application that you're going to use now or in the future can read those tags. So you may write album artist, embed album art, and do all kinds of stuff like this is my favorite classical, whatever from this person, and the violinist used these strings, whatever you want, and you can read it today if you're using, say, JRiver, but, what are you going to use next week or in 10 years from now? You're not going to want to rip these files again, because that's the most expensive thing is your time when you're ripping your whole collection, so you want to do it once. So I don't recommend WAV files for that. It's just because it's a metadata nightmare. But it's a standard that a lot of recording studios will just use WAV. AIFF, that's kind of, a lot of people will call that Apple's version of WAV. It's uncompressed, just like WAV. It supports a little bit better metadata, and iTunes reads that metadata. Not everything will read it. Most programs will read it. PCM, these ones are just without what's called a container or a wrapper. So WAV and AIFF, those are a container or a wrapper around the PCM file. So if you don't want that, you could just use straight PCM, but good luck playing that anywhere or getting any metadata involved. So that's, if you're into causing yourself trouble and pain, go for it. Let's see. The other relevant ones, some of these are lossy. And I guess I don't rip my music into lossy formats, meaning if I buy a CD, I just want to rip exactly what's on there. I don't want to dumb it down and get rid of some of the data to make it smaller. That's just my choice, though. If you want to squeeze more onto an iPod or your phone or whatever, you may want to do that. Whatever. So FLAC, Free Lossless Audio Codec, that's the one I use now. It's got awesome metadata, and it's supported by everything except iTunes. So, and Apple Lossless, okay, that's kind of Apple's version of, I won't say it's version of FLAC, but it's lossless codec. So they've open sourced it now, which is really cool, meaning everyone can take a look at it. But I guess everyone I know is saying why, because we already have FLAC, we don't need another one. These other ones are kind of just, not really used by, say, like the audiophile crowd. So the popular ones are WAV, AIFF, FLAC, and Apple Lossless. You can also do rip to multiple formats if you want to, add them. So, of course, being audiophiles, there's got to be an argument over which one sounds better. I leave that one up to everyone else. So rip till your heart's content in every format you want. Play it back. It's all free to do. And have a jolly time. Whatever you settle on, great, because it works for you. I use FLAC. Other questions? Yes?
Pay more for a music server, which looks like a lot of people are
Wait,
getting.
can you?
As you start paying more for your music server,
Yep.
as a lot of people are giving us the opportunity to do, what are you really getting?
As you start paying more for music servers, what do you really get? Probably want to ask the manufacturers that question. I'll give you my answer. So, like every other hobby, money doesn't always correspond to better. Sometimes you get a very, very nice looking chassis that, you know, built like a tank, looks great, and sometimes that's incredibly critical. Some of the better ones that I use, say one of my favorites right now is the Arender W20. I think it's 15,000 or over or so, but what they've done with that piece is really, really, really cool. The iPad application for control is terrific. I mean, you're paying for that application that they've developed themselves, and it works awesome. And the Arender W20 is the music server. They first came out with the S10. It's a company from South Korea. Great music server. So other things that they've done is separate, like they made their own motherboard. They separated they have two boards. One's it's their own motherboard. I think it's an AMD board that does any of the computing. It runs Linux. Then there's a separate audio board that sits on top of very thick aluminum to block any noise. And then there's an isolated USB output port. There's dual wire AES. If you output to a DAC that supports dual wire, like a DCS, Chord, Pacific Microsonics. There's word clock input and output. And there's, I think this one has 6 terabytes hard drive space enclosed in an aluminum chassis for noise, heat, and everything. So there's things like that that you get for more money. It's really tough to say. I'm not a manufacturer of them, and that's just one thing I've seen. The more you pay, there's that. I think Burmester has a music server that's, I want to say 30 or 50,000. The iPad app on that is really, really cool. I haven't spent much time with it. But is that better than a PC that you can buy for $500? It's, that's up to everyone else to figure out.
Just the ones you designed, I'm not a computer guy at all, but I tapped your site a little bit. What's the difference between like the Zoom and Arbit? Is that a feature issue?
Oh, sure. So on my site, I come up with kind of computer designs, and I say, okay, everyone here, if you want to build it, great. Here's how you do it. Or if you want to buy it, some other site's going to sell it. I don't make any money from it. So there's a couple different designs. One's kind of a very low power design. The Zuma version is a high power design. So by high power, it just runs like a Intel i7 processor versus the low power run, an Intel Atom processor. So there's other differences, but kind of the thing with a high power machine is things are going to respond much faster. Say if you run JRiver and you remote control it, things are just very snappy. But if you ever want to do any, say, DSD to PCM conversion on the fly, or if you want to do any room correction, you need that extra processor power. I usually use a very low power machine, just because what I found is you can really inject a lot of noise into your audio system if your computer is noisy. So, and I'm not acoustically noisy, but electrically noisy. So I have at home one of these little Intel Next Unit of Computing boxes. It's like this big, 4-inch by 4-inch. And when I connect that to a DAC that's not isolated, I can't listen to it because you hear nothing but high-pitched squeals and all kinds of crap. So I like the low power. and I'm powering it with batteries. I'm powering the USB card by battery, and I'm powering the motherboard by batteries. So it's like any step I can do towards isolation and cleaner power, it helps me out. So that's kind of the difference. Yes?
Other than your own website, do you have any favorite websites that you'd recommend?
Other than my own, do I have any other favorite websites I recommend? I read Bob Lefsett's blog like every day, but probably not related to computer audio. He writes about music, and it's fascinating. I don't know. I don't really have that much time. I wish you could check out AudioStream. That's kind of related. But I really don't know of many. Other questions? Yes?
What equipment or whatever do you need to rip an SACD?
Okay, if you want to rip an SACD, that will be kind of a science project for, I would say a weekend, but it'll probably be longer than that. If anyone here's done it, probably know what I mean. So right now you need a Sony PlayStation 3 of a certain vintage and running a certain level of firmware that if you buy one that's past that level, it's very hard to go back. You may not be able to go back. And if you kind of get where I'm going with that, it's not easy. It's difficult. So on my site and on other sites, there are instructions on how to do it from start to finish. So it's not that simple. Once you get it set up, sure, it's easy. But fortunately now, you can start to buy some of the DSD files. So hopefully you won't need a PS3 to rip them anymore. Yes?
There are some good sites that do professional ripping.
Oh, you use it as a service?
It's a service, $5 a layer. So the SACD,
Hey, Gordon, you guys
channel layer, a 2-channel layer, and also a CD layer. You do the ripping of the CD layer with J-River or DD Power, and then choose between the other two. My choice would be the multi-channel layer. And then use J-River to downmix the multi-channel 2-channel. So for $5, you don't have to invest the time to learn the technique. You don't have to invest in the equipment.
Yeah, so he's saying that there's sites that will rip the SACD for you, the DSD layers?
Yeah, of course, DSD. It could be in a form of a 128 or 256 DSF file.
Okay, and they haven't been busted yet?
I mean, the even more interesting question is, of course, the biggest most people use it, but nobody rips the Blu-ray.
Oh, Blu-ray's easier, much easier to rip.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know, you've made the leap to something that's difficult to rip. Blu-ray, there's all kinds of software out there that you can rip it.
Yeah.
And some of it's fantastic.
Yeah, so I did a seminar last year on how to rip Blu-ray, and I think there's video of it. So if anybody wants to...
What's your favorite Blu-ray ripping software?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I haven't ripped a Blu-ray. I ripped all mine, and then haven't touched it since last year when I did the seminar. So, you know. But what's cool is I love ripping Blu-ray concerts. There's some awesome stuff out there. So if you can find any Blu-ray concerts you love, you can rip the PCM tracks right off and play it on your system. So.
We go back to DSD for a minute.
Yes, we certainly can.
Okay, so you're the leading expert on
No.
computer audio. And therefore, by default, you're also probably the leading expert on DACs.
Uh-oh.
Because you have to play the two together. Right?
Set me up.
I am indeed.
Okay.
So here's the choice. You've got yourself an SACD rip, a DSD DSF file.
Yeah.
Or you've downloaded it.
Yep.
But you haven't bought your DAC yet.
Yep.
And there's two classes of DACs out there. The class with respect to SACD. One class is saying, we go digital analog without using PCM. We go directly from Native DSD. Mm-hmm. The other guy says, I'm sorry, I just got PCM. Somebody, maybe J-River in the context of your computer, has to transcode from the DSD to PCM to let that DAC play it.
Yes.
So now, what do you advise people with regard to, I've got 100, 200 SACDs, I'm into computer audio, I want a DAC that's going to sound really good. Does that mean I just stay away from the DAC that only does PCM?
Yeah, see, that's a very, very good question. So as, you know, the question it kind of is, I have DSD stuff, and I want a DAC. Do I get a DAC that's going to play DSD for me, or one that I got to convert DSD to PCM with a software player? That one is going to be argued forever. So some designers, DAC designers, think that it's best to convert DSD files to PCM before you play them back. And I know there's a paper that Daniel Weiss wrote on why he thinks that, and it has to do with filtering. And if you, say if you play back the native DSD, and he says that the analog filters that you need to use have really bad phase problems, and he thinks it's far better to do it, convert it to PCM in the digital domain, and then play it back. Other designers are saying, why would you ever, touch the native file and convert it to something it's not? So there's really no answer to that question, unfortunately. And I mean, I'm in the same dilemma. I have great DSD material that I want to listen to. If I was going to buy a DAC today, gosh, it's kind of a conundrum, right? You would love to be able to try it both ways. Okay, I'm going to convert it and listen to it, or I'm going to play it natively and listen to it. But then native playback is going to sound different on a different DAC. So wait, I liked it non-native with this DAC, but if I use this other DAC, native's better. It's kind of a mess. So ask 2 engineers, you'll get 4 answers at least. And I had a very long email chain about this very thing, and can you optimize a DAC to play back both PCM and DSD at the same time? So some manufacturers say, well, clearly yes. Others are saying, no, you can't. There's so much more involved in a DAC than just the DAC chip. It's more than just an ESS chip. Saying, no, there's no way you can play back DSD and PCM and not suffer PCM quality. So it's really messy. And if you can, talk to as many of the manufacturers as possible here and just get their take on it, and at least take everything with a grain of salt, obviously, but at least understand the concept they're talking, and then just listen to it. If you like the way it sounds, in the end, that's what you're going to be doing anyway, listening to it. So that's kind of my take on it right now, and I just look at my music, and if I have DSD, I want to play it, and then it's figuring out how to play it. But I'm certainly not into the what's better, DSD or PCM, because that's not for it. Yes?
If I have a desktop with USB running out to a DAC, is my sound card doing anything at all?
No, you can. The question is, if I have a desktop with USB running out to a DAC, is the sound card doing anything? Well, I say no, but with an asterisk. It could be playing the beeps and you've got mail. But you can totally disable any sound card you have in your computer. It doesn't do anything for that playback.
And then the second question, I guess, is what's the best way to isolate the noise that you said is produced by?
Yeah, so the question, what's the best way to isolate the noise? There's ways that you can control and ways that you can't control, and ways that you can control with, like, your dollars. So ways that I look at it as from a consumer point of what you can kind of control is, say, a lot of DACs require power from the motherboard, the bus power, to run. So if you do that, sometimes you can run your USB cable through a linear power supply or a battery power supply instead of the DC power supply that's built into your computer for bottom dollar. That'll clear up noise. The way you can vote with your dollars is to buy DACs that have isolation if you like the way they sound in the end. Like right now I have the Air QB9 DSD DAC in, and that I believe has optical isolation inside, not SPDIF, but optical isolation. So no matter what I plug into that DAC, I cannot get any noise to come out through my speakers. I get music, yes, but any electrical noise will not come out. Like my little Intel NUC noisy computer doesn't output any noise. If I connect it to another DAC I have without that isolation, noisier than heck. So you may not have to do anything if you're using a DAC that's isolated, or you may have to look at the other routes. And with some DACs, if they don't require USB bus power, you can get a cable without USB bus power, or sometimes you can turn the bus power off. So those are kind of some of the options. Do you know if your DAC needs bus power? Does it require a plug-in from a wall?
It is actually. You got the Cambridge required.
Does it require power over the USB?
I'm not using, I have one of the first versions of Cambridge Audio. As I recall, the USB is not, is limited in what will accept, or am I wrong about that?
You're probably right. It's probably an adaptive USB from the very first versions.
I'm outputting SPDIF from a sound card, and that's, I guess, I have a related question. There, I need the sound card to output that.
Yeah, if you're going SPDIF, yeah.
Is there a difference in quality of sound cards in that case?
Yes. And yeah, there's a difference in sound cards, and a lot of times you're limited to the computer you have. Can I fit this one? Do I want to spend $1,000 on a sound card, or do I just want to get a different DAC? Or but there are differences. Yes.
It might make sense to get another DAC that is really good with USB and forget about it.
It could, but if you're happy with what you got,
no, you're never happy.
I hear you. I hear you. Yes.
As you know, the latest version of JRiver has a PCM to DSD on the fly feature.
Yeah.
Can you comment on that?
I heard about it. That's about it. I honestly, Matt from JRiver is here. You may want to ask him. But yeah, I remember they were thinking about that option, thinking, okay, we can go from PCM to DSD on the fly if you want. And I was thinking, why would I ever do that? I don't know why I would do that, but people may want to do that. So,
on that point, I've read that a number of DSD-capable DACs always convert PCM to DSD. The theory being, in JRiver, if you take that processing and you put it in the software, you free the hardware with some processing, and theoretically it'll sound better.
Sure. So you're taking different engineering looks at it. Do I want to convert it within the DAC, or do I want to convert it outside of the DAC? Yeah, that one would probably be dependent on every single DAC too. Does this engineer do a different conversion algorithm than say Matt at JRiver or whatever? So, yes.
I've been looking for a program that will read my music files and rename them in a method that I've come up with. Whether I want to go by artist or album or whatever.
Yep.
And I also wanted to listen to the files that are named unknown artists and figure out what those artists are and name those files.
Yep.
Is there a software that will do that?
Yes. So that's a two-part question. So you want to name the actual file with metadata, kind of like the actual file will name artist, album, track?
Right.
Okay.
I have some old stuff on there that old WAV files, and it's filed under artist name, album title, but a lot of the tracks are unknown artists, unknown song.
So you have them in a folder hierarchy, but the actual file doesn't have the name on it. Oh boy. I believe DB Poweramp could probably do that for you.
Because there's for my phone, I've got a Soundpound application.
That was going to be my next suggestion.
And figure out what it is and tell me all about it.
Yeah.
There had to be something that you could listen to it off your.
I wish there was a Soundhound for, say, JRiver or something. Listen to this and just name it. That would be pretty cool. But yeah, I don't. It's kind of to be the two-step process. But if you want to do a conversion, I think DB Poweramp could take your file folder structure and output your tracks with that big long name in it, I think.
Well, or can DB Poweramp go from folder structure to tags?
You can probably do that as well.
So you could, if it can't go directly to another folder structure, you can take it, have it read it, store it in the tags, and then rename it from the tag that you just generated.
Yeah, I think you can get there with DB Poweramp. Yes?
I was kind of looking around for DACs. I was, kind of doing my research.
You were last year too.
Yeah, I was. I was like, here's what I deliver. Hey, I'm like right there. I figured out what I wanted, and then went over to our Colorado Audio Society, our end of the year party, and the member was playing. He had a setup where he had like a digital amp, so it didn't do a DAC at all. It just converted it. I mean, you put it in digitally, and then it was analog out. So that threw my whole thing into a tizzy, because it sounded great, and it sounded like it's a more simple.
Yeah, yeah. Well, did you see the new Lin Accurate? No, what did they call it? They announced that CDF, but it's digital all the way to the speakers. kind of cool.
Exactly. So is that the next big?
I wouldn't say it's the next big thing. It's been around for a long time. Meridian's been doing it for a long time. It just comes down to what you like. Do you like the sound of it? Really, it's a really engineering-wise, it's a really cool way to do it. You know, keep it digital till the very last second. But a lot of people like to, you know, like a new amp came out from XYZ manufacturer and they want to use that amp. Oh, you can't do it if you're using this system. Or, you know, some people don't like the limitations. Other people love the end-to-end. It's kind of like Mac versus PC. You know, the digital to speakers is kind of a Mac way. The whole environment is just set up to work. So if you like the sound, awesome. It's a cool way to do it. But it's definitely not like the next thing. Everybody's going to move to it.
The other thing I was wondering is, will that kind of setup handle DSD?
None of them that I know will. Yet, anyway. I'm sure somebody will do it. But I don't think, like, say, the Meridian version and the Lin version, I don't think either of those companies are very big supporters in DSD. So they'll probably stick to PCM. Just my guess. Yes?
Have you done any looking into how Android communicates with DACs? I was going to go on CanJam and see if anyone there had any experience with it, but have you played with Android and DACs at all?
So the question is about using Android with DACs. And I looked at it probably a year ago when some cooler Android devices came out and I want to connect to an external DAC. And I think it was really, really nerdy to try to even get it to work, and it didn't work the way I wanted it to then, so I haven't looked at it since. I'm kind of waiting for everyone else to figure it out, and then it's like, okay, I'll go for it. And I guess the reason why I think that's cool is, like, I just got this Google Nexus 7 tablet. The thing's awesome, and I'd love to be able to hook a DAC to it up, like on the airplane. There's no way I want to use that thing at home, like for my main collection, with its whole 16 gig of memory. So that would be a disaster. But for portability, they're really cool.
I'm actually looking at doing this at work. So you just take your Android tablet and you've got everything hooked to one of those docks.
Sure.
Tablet a dock and off you go.
Yeah, he's thinking about doing it at work. It would be cool. Speaking of that, I was just introduced to a really cool product. And I got to show everyone. It's so cool. I don't have any vested interest in it other than I want to buy one. And it's $219. Sound Matters is the company. -7 is the product. So this little, it's like a little speaker bar. It's Bluetooth, $219. This thing sounds so cool. I heard it this morning at the hotel, and I was like, this might be cooler than any product I see at the show. Just because I was so blown away at the sound. So if anybody's looking for, like, it runs off battery or USB power or a power adapter. If anybody's looking for something like portable or at the office or anything, it is so cool. So check this thing out, soundmatters.com.
Is that kind of the audiophile grade soundbar? Because I've seen those soundbars show up at Best Buy. They sound like crud.
You know, you could call it a soundbar, but it's really like, it's like this big. It's not like the ones you'd put underneath the flat screen. So it's seriously so cool, though. Check it out. You will hear it, and I was just amazed. And then if you set it on the table, the bass you get is like crazy. You can also plug this into a little subwoofer, too. It's so cool. I mean, yeah, we're not talking the height of living, but my God, that thing was really cool. Other questions? Yes? Oh, no. The guy next to you is probably thinking the same thing.
So, any difference if I'm using an iTouch, an iPad, an iMac, as far as playing back off of there to a DAC? I mean, does it make any difference? Will all those capable of doing the same thing or not?
No. The handheld and portable devices, you'll probably be very limited to what DACs you can connect to. iMac can probably connect to almost anything, except you'll be limited if you need to use like an AES output into a DAC. But if say you're talking USB, you could use, like, say, iPad, iPhone with a camera connection kit to actually get USB out. It's kind of a kludge, but it would work, versus an iMac, you just plug it in and it works great. So I wouldn't do the portable type devices for a main like listening, but like if you're at the office or something, if you bring your phone, you have Mog or Spotify, yeah, there's ways to make it work, but they're not all equal. Did that answer? Okay, cool. Yes?
Talk a little bit about memory size and how that affects sound quality. Do you have an opinion about that?
Okay, the question is, can I talk about memory size and how that affects sound quality? And if I have an opinion on that, oh boy. I have never found memory size to matter. Let's see. I always get, this Mac is different. I think I have 16 gig of memory just because it's like soldered onto the board. You can't add to it, so I thought I'm going to fill this thing up. But like some computers at home have 4 gig. Others have 8. Just kind of depends. But I've never found a sonic difference. So, maybe that's, if you're looking for a more argumentative answer. Yes?
So you find that the quality of a power supply for a server makes a big difference?
Yeah, I do find the quality of the power supply does matter. And, at first the thinking was, okay, you're going to plug this good power supply into a motherboard that's got DC to DC converters, and it's going to be terrible anyway. That's not what I found, and it's not what a lot of people have found in the end. So, yeah, I found it does matter.
Linear power supply versus a battery, are you getting close to battery quality when you have a linear power supply? People who do that for Mac Minis, for instance.
Yeah, there are. I don't think one of them is like inherently better than the other. I'm using battery just because I love the battery unit that I have. It's Redwine Audio Black Lightning. To me, the way that thing is set up is awesome. There's different modes. You can add a battery pack, unplug it totally or not, so I love that way. But there's a lot of people using linear supplies too that just love it. That's just plug it in, done, forget it, don't worry about a battery. So either or, kind of whatever you like. Other questions? Yes?
You tried using a linear power supply on the Intel next unit of computing?
I have not. It takes a 19 volt, and I don't have a 19 volt other power supply for it. But yeah, that would be pretty cool to see if that noise is coming from the brick, or if I could reduce some of that. Yeah, I would like to try that.
Are those fanless, those next unit of compute?
You can get fanless ones from a company called Logic Supply, but directly from Intel, no, they have fans in them. Other questions? We got 5 minutes. All right.
So, is there some kind of trade-off with DOP? My DAC does DSD, but it's in that PCM container. So, is there any limitation?
Okay. The question is there any limitation? His DAC does DOP for DSD versus native DSD. So some people may be going, what the hell are you talking about? So kind of a really, really cool way to play back DSD content on a DAC is to use what's called DOP. What is it? DSD over PCM. So really, there's no PCM conversion, but what it's doing is taking the DSD audio, packing it in to PCM, and then sending it out to the DAC. The DAC unpacks it, and voila, you're playing DSD. I don't think there's any degradation or any impact or whatever, because you're still playing native DSD. It's just packed in a PCM format. So you're not losing anything. Especially if you like the sound of your DAC too, don't even think about changing just so you can play native. No way. Other questions? Yes?
Between last year and now, any developments on the multi-channel DAC or sound card front? Anything interesting?
Multi-channel developments between last year and now. So I don't know if you read, Ted Brady published a review on my site of the Exasound, oh gosh, I think E20 maybe, or E28. It's a multi-channel converter. Very, very cool. There's not much multi-channel going on, really. No new multi-channel sound cards that I know of that a lot of people are using or anything. I think if anything, it'll go multi-channel USB, just because that's pretty simple. But other than Access Sound, I think some people are doing it with like 3 MyTech units or something like that. But that Access Sound is probably the latest development, and it's pretty cool. And I think George is here on the 5th floor. Are they? Cool, cool. Cool, yeah, multi-channel's cool. It's just so hard, so much equipment, you know, for playback. Other questions? Yes?
What DACs are you on the forefront for reviews?
DAC review is coming up. The Air QB9 DSD. Have that one. That's really, really cool. I love that thing. The T+A music player balanced. I have that in. That's a DLNA streamer, or it's a renderer. Other DACs in. Ted is going to be writing a review of the Chord. What's the name of the little, is it Cute DSD or something? So that'll be coming up shortly. I'm trying to get the aesthetics DAC in. I talked to Jim a while ago, and he was waiting for the DSD upgrade to send it, so I got to talk to him here. But I heard that at the Newport show, and I really, really loved the sound of it there, so I'm looking forward to getting that one in. So any suggestions on DACs you'd like to see reviewed?
DNAD 1050.
Okay, cool. Yes?
Have you reviewed the PS Audio DAC?
Yes, I reviewed the Perfect Wave DAC 2. Yes. I really liked it. And it's weird, I can't think of is it like a native X mode the new one's got? That really made a huge difference. So I'm glad I reviewed the Mark II versus the Mark I.
Good, because I got the card to put mine up to that upgrade.
Yeah, do it. It made a big difference, and using that native X was really, really cool. Other questions? We got 1 minute. Yes? Oh, he was telling me 1 minute. Yeah.
You were talking about linear power supplies in the PC a moment ago. I'm accustomed to traditional internal, not the external brick, but a traditional internal power supply. So when we say a linear power supply, how is that distinguished from a traditional internal power supply in PC?
Okay, linear has nothing to do with whether it's internal or external. So a lot of high-end audio components will have a linear supply versus a switch mode supply. So, you know, that's really it's linear versus switch mode, not internal, external.
Okay.
Yes?
A year ago, you reviewed Mog and Spotify, and your choice was Mog then?
Yes.
Is it still?
Mog is still, yeah. I think the Spotify interface is terrible. And I guess if you know John Durda from Peachtree, he uses Spotify, but he said, well, it's because all my friends are on it. And it's easy for the social capability. But he's like, I like Mog, it sounds better. I just think Mog is so simple. So yeah, Mog, it'll probably soon be like Beats Audio Music or something since they got bought out. But yeah, Mog is my go-to. I use it every day.
Have you seen a day of a service like Mog with a higher quality?
You know, a question about a service like Mog with higher quality. You know, some of them kind of exist. There's like Aura Stream. There may be a couple other ones, but really nothing like with the Mog catalog. Like I can go to my iPhone and download a new release from Tuesday. I haven't seen anything like that yet, anyway. I think it's all a bandwidth issue. So we are done. It's 2 o'clock. I'll go outside if anybody wants to talk until they kick us out. Thank you.